estimates of potential output using two different methods. One is the deterministic trend. The second method that we use is the PHD filter. Okay. Using these two methods, we are able to construct estimates of potential output, and once we have the potential output, we are able to create estimates of the output gap. As I said in the morning, the output gap is an important variable that as a policymaker you need to know and have a good handle on, or as good a handle on it as you can, because that determines how you're going to take your policy actions. Okay? When the output gap is positive, which means that the economy is producing above potential output, you need to slow down the economy, and when the economy is producing below potential, it means that there is spare capacity, employment can be generated, machines are not being utilized fully, and therefore we can stimulate the economy and get a higher level of output and fuller employment of resources. A third method that I want to discuss very quickly, not in too much detail, because I want to move on to two other topics today, is the idea that we can estimate the potential output using the production function. As we said, the two methods that we've seen are basically statistical methods, the averaging methods, whereas the production function has a little bit more of a feel to it in terms of the various economic variables. So here is the production function for an economy in which the level of output depends upon the amount of capital and labor, which are the factors of production, and it also depends on A, which is the total factor productivity. Now, output is something that we measure, we can measure. The amount of capital stock in the economy is something that we can measure or make some estimate of, and the labor in the economy is something that we can measure as well. The capital can be either physical capital, or it can be natural resources, or it can be human capital, and what we include in productivity is the role of technology and of institutions. So here we have sort of some theoretical basis for potential growth, in which the production function allows us to determine how output is growing over time. Obviously, if the population in the economy is growing, the number of people entering the labor force is growing, so the size of the labor force is growing. If the participation rate in the economy increases, if your mother was working yesterday only at home, her output was not included in GDP, but if she now begins to participate in the labor force and works, she opens up a restaurant, then her output is included in the what she produces is included in GDP. And finally, we can also say the natural rate of unemployment, which is if there are frictions, then there will be some unemployment, there might be some structural employment in the economy as well. So those kinds of factors determine the rate of growth of labor. The rate at which capital accumulates is the amount of investment in the economy. And finally, the total factor productivity is something that in general, as you know from your earlier macro courses, is a residue. After we've taken out the role of capital and labor in the output, the growth of output, the A is the solo residue. Okay? And we try to sort of put in more and more things that go into the production function. We try and include other things in this A, okay? And in particular, institutions, so on and so forth, structural reforms to say if these things, if the economy works smoothly, if there are less restrictions on the economy, maybe there is a role for better institutions. And some of the recent work on growth, there are 3 people who won Nobel Prize for saying that countries which had different colonial histories, Darren Acemoglu, Simon Johnson, and Robinson got the Nobel Prize a few years ago for looking at the role of history on growth. That's the general framework that we are looking at. I won't go through all of these slides one by one, but okay, this is something that we've seen before. So this is the K, this is the L, this is the same number of people if they are more educated, have more knowledge and more skills, and can contribute more to output. And then finally we have total factor productivity. All of that is put together in a simple production function where the level of output depends upon the level of technology, the amount of capital, and the amount of labor. And if you write it in log terms, that basically becomes log of y is equal to log of a plus alpha, which is the share of capital in total output. 1 minus alpha is the share of labor in total output. Okay. And because the shares of capital and labor in total output is equal to 1, we have constant returns to the scale. So if you double the amount of capital and labor, it doubles the amount of output and labor. This is a constant returns to scale production function. We can then use that constant returns to scale production function by asking, given that we have a relationship now between capital and labor, okay, we can use this relationship to estimate potential output by saying that the economy may not be producing at full employment and therefore output is less, but if the economy were producing at full output, then this is what the level of output would be. If the economy is not using all of its capital fully, then that's the level of output. But if the economy were using all of its capacity, full capacity, then full utilization of labor, full utilization of capital, and if the economy had total factor productivity at the level that it should be, based on some estimate that we might make of total factor productivity, then this is what potential output would be. There is an actual output, but if the economy were producing at full capacity, then this is what potential output would be. And the economy can be producing at less than potential output, or it can be producing at potential output, or it can be producing less than potential output, because it's either not using its labor fully or not using its capital fully. So based on that, if we have estimates of labor and we have some idea what the full employment that labor is, we make some assumptions, then we can construct a measure of total factor productivity, and we do that by substituting actual labor with the potential labor input, maybe some kind of a trend, and which corresponds to the non-accelerating inflation rate of unemployment. So the economy is stable and full employment. And instead of using actual total factor productivity, which we calculate, we can calculate the Solow residual, run a filter through it, and we will do it. I'll make all of these ideas clear in the spreadsheets. We can then say, instead of the Solow residual total factor productivity at this level, if the economy were growing at potential, then total factor productivity should have been this, and therefore potential output should have been high. And we can obtain estimate, or we can make an estimate of total potential labor input by looking at the working age population, the labor force participation rate, multiplied by 1 minus the non-accelerating inflation rate of unemployment. And once we have that, we can multiply by the number of hours to get the total amount of labor input in the economy. We're not going to do all of these in a very complicated sort of way, but just we're going to give you a flavor of how this thing is done. And the estimation of the non-accelerating inflation rate of employment can come from other sources. For capital, we know that the total capital stock in the economy is the accumulation of all the investments that have been made in the past. If we have 10 roads today, one road was made yesterday, another one was made yesterday before, and so on and so forth. But the capital that we have from before depreciates.
Yep.
So there is a rate of depreciation of capital. So capital today is whatever it was yesterday minus the part that has been depreciated, and on top of that, we're making more investment. So the total capital stock is something that comes from the past and something that's related. So that's the stock from yesterday, and the stock today is equal to whatever it was yesterday minus the depreciated amount of capital plus whatever we are adding to that stock by this time. So once we have the production function and we have L and K, which we can measure, all these three things on the side can be measured, and we can calculate A at each point of time. Actual total factor productivity can be calculated, okay? And we say that total factor productivity has a trend and of course stochastic components. And we separate out the trend by using filters, just like we did in the case of output or output in the morning. And as a policy maker, you have to ask the question, when you start thinking about the long-term position of the economy, because potential output growth has to do something to do also with how the economy is growing over time, how the potential of the economy to provide goods and services changing over time. This becomes an important discussion when you start talking about long-term growth of the economy. And these are the kind of questions that you might want to think about. These are the kind of questions that come up. For example, what is the role of institutions or the quality of institutions and the business climate in total factor productivity? If the government makes it easy to open, close businesses, provides a good infrastructure, so on and so forth, then that will lead to higher potential growth rate in the future. But if the quality of institutions, for example, if there is a high-speed bullet train that goes from Ho Chi Minh City to Hanoi, you will get onto the train in the morning, have breakfast on the train, you will have lunch in Da Nang, and you will have dinner in Hanoi. So something that used to take a very long time, getting onto planes, and planes are good as well, but a high-speed train could carry a lot more people at a lower cost to do the same journey. That makes it easier to do business. So the provision of good infrastructure by the government can lead to improvement in productivity and therefore in So once we have the production function, we can calculate total factor productivity, and given our production function, we just write it in log terms, and the growth rate of output is the growth rate of productivity plus alpha times the growth rate of capital 1 minus alpha times the growth rate of K. This is just a simple logarithmic, and then taking derivatives on both sides. So we know this, we know this, we know this, we can find out the growth rate of total factor productivity. It's the same production function that's written in log terms, and you take the derivatives on both sides. So, in the case of the US, this kind of an exercise is done by the Bureau of Labor Statistics, which calculates the contribution of different factors of production and the contribution of total factor productivity to growth. So, looking for information on the US, you basically click on this website here, and it will take you to the most recent calculation of total factor productivity. This is for up to 2023. In the case of Vietnam, people have done this kind of a calculation. This is an earlier study where in the earlier years, a lot of the growth is coming from capital accumulation. The economy is investing a lot. It's an economy that's still growing. And total factor productivity either has a negative, it's a residual, and in the later years, as the economy becomes more and more sophisticated, there is a positive contribution from total factor productivity growth to overall growth in the economy. And this is a cross-country comparison of the contribution of factors of production and total factor productivity growth across a range of countries. Once again, the quality of institutions, business climate, openness to trade, quality of public infrastructure are all factors that determine investment and the growth of total factor productivity. The question was asked in the morning, what is the relationship between structural reforms and growth? Okay. Once again, when we're thinking about structural reforms, we're not thinking in terms of short-term stabilization. We're thinking of structural reforms in the context of growth over a long period of time, or the productive capacity of the economy over long periods of time. And once again, these are the kind of factors we've already discussed. If you have efficient financial markets, financial intermediation between savers and investors is easier, the cost of borrowing is lower, and therefore investment can be higher. And with higher investment over the long term generates higher growth. Okay. So Vietnam is thinking of becoming an international financial center. Okay. If that happens, maybe you would have, that's a big structural reform.
Yeah.
The introduction of capital markets at a sophisticated scale into Vietnam. And if that improves financial intermediation, if that brings more capital to Vietnam, then there are more opportunities for investors to borrow at lower cost of capital, and that would contribute to growth over the long term. Once again, it's the same picture here. And these are the different kinds of reforms. And this is a study, I think, done by the IMF, or I can find out. Different kinds of reforms are required in different kinds of economies at different levels of per capita income. Vietnam used to be a low income developing country, and in those countries, typically what you're looking for is trade liberalization, making the economy open. The capital market is not very sophisticated. The banking system has a lot of inefficiencies. The level of infrastructure is small or low, and the quality may not be very good. And in the agriculture and legal system and property rights are not well defined. As an economy progresses to higher levels of income, agriculture becomes a less important part of the economy, and they have already liberalized quite a bit. So the kinds of reforms that are required are slightly different kinds of reforms. In addition to some of these reforms here, which can continue, you want less regulation or more efficient regulation of businesses. And when the economy reaches a slightly higher level of income or becomes an advanced economy, you still need infrastructure, you still need a good banking system, but you need other kinds of reforms as well. The different kinds, so this is sort of a typology of the kinds of reforms that are required in the economy, separated by levels of income. this is once again examples of what kind of reforms are required, what kind of structural weaknesses exist in economies. I'm not sure what country I'm in.
China.
Once again, an economy that has grown very, very strongly over long periods of time. Look at these growth rates, 9%, 10%, 8%, and so forth. And a very large contribution to growth in this, in China, has come from capital. It is an economy that invested a lot in public and private infrastructure. Okay. You can look at some of these things more. These are kinds of recommended structural reforms in East Asian economies, Indonesia, Malaysia, Philippines, Thailand, and for Vietnam, what has been recommended, this was recommended in 2016, is that Vietnam needs to improve its infrastructure. That was a good. It needs to have reform its state-owned enterprises. Remember, we had problems with Vinashin, a very large state-owned enterprise, which went bankrupt. Resources were utilized, but nothing much came out of it. And then there had to be an external debt restructure. Vietnam also needs to create high productivity jobs, needs to move people from agriculture to manufacturing sector, and a lot of that has happened in the last 10 years. Okay. So that's pretty much looking at the aggregate supply side from the, and looking at aggregate supply side from the perspective of thinking about potential output. And potential output has to do with not just the short-term stabilization, but we want to know where the economy is relative to its potential so that we calibrate macroeconomic policies to support the economy, but potential output also has a longer-term role in our thinking as something that relates to the growth of the economy and standards of living over long periods of time. Okay. Let's now implement this idea of being able to estimate potential output using the production function in our spreadsheet. Let's go back to our Excel file, and in the sheet which says PO production function, potential output production function, we have in the first two columns, we have real GDP, and we have gross investment on a seasonally adjusted basis, which has been collected for you from some other sources. Okay. So what we want to, how do we get a series for capital stock out of this data? Remember, we said that the capital stock in time period T is whatever the capital stock was in time period T minus 1. You have to subtract from that the depreciation of the capital stock, and you have to add investment. Okay. That's how we got the 1 minus delta times KT minus 1 plus I. What are we trying to do? We want to find a series for the capital stock in time period 0, time period KT. If we have the investment for this particular time period, the capital stock in time period 2 is equal to 1 minus delta times the capital stock in time period 1 plus the investment in time period 2. We can work it backwards. but we do need this number because we don't have anything to go back to. So if we can make some assumption about this number, if we have K0 and we have some assumption that we make about delta, and if we know investment, then we can create a stock of capital going forward. Remember, there is the idea that there is the capital output ratio, which for an economy is the ratio of output to capital. If we make some assumption about the capital output ratio, remember that in your simple micro macro courses, we have the idea of the capital output ratio. If we know the output in time period 0, and we make some assumption about the capital output ratio, then we can calculate the capital stock in time period 0 as just something that we have assumed. And of course, we know the output in time period 0. So let's do that. Let's assume a capital output ratio which is up there of 2.75 in time period 0 to get the capital stock. Not by C5. Yes, I want to do that. Yeah. Because we have the real GDP in 2010 and we want to take the capital stock, the starting capital stock. So for the first time period, let me just use the assumption the capital output ratio. And I will get a number for the capital stock in the initial time period. Once I have this, I can use this equation to calculate the capital stock in all the other time periods, as long as I make some assumption about the rate of depreciation. So here we are assuming a rate of depreciation of 0.012, and if I copy the formula from the into the second cell here, then I can get the capital stock in the first time period. First time period, I use this relationship for K0. For the next time period, I take the capital stock from here, take out the part that's not depreciated, and add the investment. Sorry? No, the investment in the current quarter. So for this time period, I use the capital output ratio. Here's my GDP, there's my capital output ratio. So 2.7 times that number is this. For this time period, I take this number, previous number, I take out 1 minus delta and add the investment for, it should be from this time period. Have I not got it correct? It should be C then. Correct. Thank you. Okay. So here is my series on the capital stock. Okay. Using this for the initial time period and this relationship for the next time period. Now I can calculate, I have my capital stock. Okay. And where is my labor output? Here is my employment or labor. Okay. So in my production function I have K, I have L, and I have Y. Once I have those components, I can calculate the total factor productivity using this formula here. This is just my production function. And as long as I have some estimate or have some idea what the share of capital in total output is, and here I'm assuming a number of 0.5. Right? So I've made an estimate of my total factor productivity, and I can carry that formula down all the way to get a series on A. Okay. Now, this is the actual employment. And let's say I want to find out what potential employment in this economy could be. It's going up and going down, well, it's not changing very much. But if I were to use a smooth HP filter trend for employment, then I could find, I could basically be thinking of employment as rising smoothly over time. I can do that. I just take the log and I could have my potential labor. Okay. I take the log, then I take the log, the HP trend of this number, then you're going to have problems, but you can do it later. But we're doing exactly the same thing. Okay? We're taking the log of this entire series and placing it here. This is equal to filter J10 to J67 at 1600. So I have a series of labor of which I've taken the log to estimate a smooth trend, an HP trend, but then I can reverse the logarithmic part to get the potential labor force. And you can obviously see now that the actual here is different from the potential labor force because we put in a smooth trend to the labor force. If your numbers look something like this, you are doing fine up till now. Yeah? the HP filters is not working. Is it working? No. It's there. It's just a question of figuring out which of these things is going to activate the computer has a different key for control shift. Try alt shift. Try alt and shift or control or try different combinations. Okay. So far so good. So good. So I would like you to now continue to fill all the other columns. You have the formulas at the top. Okay. I'm going to fill them myself and by the time you finish, when you're in column T, you now have an estimate of the output gap using the production function. And what have you done for that? You took your output, you created an estimate of the capital stock, you took your labor force, created an estimate of potential output from that labor force, and then you had the residual, which was the solo residual. You created a smooth fitted curve for A, so you got your A star, you have your L star, right? So A star, L star, you use the same K as the actual capital stock and you get a Y star. Once you have a Y star, you can take Y minus Y star divided by Y star.
Okay.
That's what you've done, right? So you created an estimate of a potential output. Again, notice that there are differences. This is a different way of creating estimates of the potential output and the output gap. So once you have done this, you have a picture in which you have three estimates of the output gap. Your blue line is your deterministic trend. Your red dotted line is your HB filter. And your third line is your, are we getting the right data? This is exactly the same. Yeah, it's correct.
Chị đang 113 luôn mà. Chị cũng đang 113.
Yeah. Okay. There are small differences between the estimate that we got from the HB filter and the estimate that we got from the production function. Close, but not exactly the same. There are differences between the two separate functions. Yes? Did I do it right? Do we have the same potential output?
Oh no.
No,
A
a little
little bit different. Do we have the same HP trend? So do we have, where is, you have the same number as me here? No?
different.
Yeah.
You have the same number as me here? This
Yes.
is the same? This is the same? This is the same?
No.
No.
This one is the same as me,
Mình cấp lên cấp xuống à?
right? And the 6.23 is the same as me? And 1.06 is, she has the same numbers as me. Yeah, she has the same numbers as me. Why are your numbers different?
Cái chứ cũng giống nhau mà. Kỳ à?
Yeah?
Potential capital. Can you move to the first one? Potential capital. Can you move? Can we see the potential capital? Potential capital. Column
Is
H.
your capital stock the same as mine?
Column H. Same. Same.
Yes? No?
Xem. Xem.
Same?
Yeah.
I like. Maybe both of us have got the wrong answer. Doesn't matter. The actual numbers don't matter, but you get the idea.
Yeah.
The idea is that we are trying to get to some number for the output gap, because that is how we need to decide about policies. But to get to the output gap, we need some number for the potential output, and there are different ways to get to estimates of potential output. That's basically what we are.
Chưa kỹ ra. Không biết đâu. Mấy bạn mới để ý á.
Once we do that,
Làm xong ra cái hình thấy giống giống đấy, thấy giống.
we can break down the contributions to growth. We can do growth accounting. So in the next sheet, there are two blue columns. If you use the formulas on top to fill them, we are now trying to break down real GDP growth and see how much of was the contribution of total factor productivity, capital and labor. We are doing a little bit of growth accounting.
Mình khác số bên kia qua transfer qua đây thì khác. Nó xài capital stock kìa.
And we've created our own chart
Tức là giống nhau mà nè.
on the contributions to growth. Okay.
Có hình giống nhau rồi đâu.
Right?
Yeah, just minor different.
This looks similar. Yeah, looks good. Sure. Same thing.
Yeah, the same thing, but
Little bit. Little bit.
Về nghiên cứu đi em đi.
Okay.
Dễ mà, con cách này cũng dễ.
Clear.
Cái gì cũng được đó.
I will save this file now onto Moodle.
Yeah.
I will call it.
Okay.
Oh, yours what?
Yeah.
What? How did you do it?
I
You have to trust that HP filter, right?
Yeah, I just unlocked it. Just setting.
I'm, so when you go home, you do it. It's very straightforward.
Yeah. But don't worry, I just unlock it when I do the exercise.
Right.
Yeah.
Very good. I'm happy. Okay, so we finished the aggregate supply. Let's now move on to aggregate demand. Should we take a 5-minute break before you want to move on to the next topic? Let's take a quick 5-minute break. That will bring us to the hour.